Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our afternoon session of the September 24th, 2013 Watsonville regularly scheduled City Council. We'll start out with roll call. Madam Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
Bielicic.
Present.
Cervantes.
Here.
Kaufman Gomez.
Present.
Dodge. Hernandez. Montesino. Hurst.
Here. Thank you. First of all, we have our consent agenda. Those are item 4.1 through item 4.6. These are generally approved in one consensus motion, but let's see if the public has any comment on any of our consent items, 4.1 through 4.6. Anyone in the public wish to comment on any of the consent agenda items? Seeing none, we'll move this on to council. Council, do we have any questions or concerns with any of the consent agenda items? Councilmember Bielicic?
Just that I will be voting no on 4.1. Thank you.
Let that be part of the permanent record. Councilmember Bielicic voting no on 4.1. That is the report approving disbursements. Other items that Councilmember Kaufman Gomez.
I do have some questions on 4.3 with Mr. Vega, if he is available.
Would you like to pull that item, or would you like to ask him those questions right now?
We'll pull it.
Okay, that's 4.3, the investment report.
Correct.
So that will now be our item 5.1. Other questions or further explanation on the consent agenda? Councilmember Bielicic.
I just wanted to commend the city with working with the Corlitas Padres and the city-owned property at Browns Valley Road and that lease agreement. I think it'll be good for the community. And also that the state Homeland Security grants for Watsonville Police and Watsonville Fire, that's a good job too. So, thank you.
Yes, I concur as well. Having the Corlitas Padres Community Center in operation and available for their rental and lease and utilization of the community is very important. And indeed, commendations to the police and fire. I know on item 4.6, $9,255 is not a lot of money to buy fire equipment, but it is, every little bit does help, and so we're glad to see that come across our desk. Councilmember Dodge, do you have any questions on the consent agenda? We're pulling item 4.3 for further discussion. Seeing no further comments or questions on the consent agenda, Madam Clerk, we have roll call, please, on the consent agenda.
Bielicic.
Yes, except 4.1.
Cervantes.
Yes.
Kaufman Gomez.
Yes.
Dodge.
Turn on your mic, please.
Hurst.
Yes, and so approved, noting Councilmember Bielsic's no vote on disbursements. And now we're going to go to item, our new item 5.1, the former item 4.3. This is a motion accepting April through June 2013 investment report. This is recommended by Administrative Services Director Vega. You have some questions, Councilmember Kaufman Gomez, for
Yes, I did.
Director Vega.
I know that we are basing this off of the benchmark that comes over from what the state uses, which obviously all they've got as prime rate is what they're earning. We're earning about 1%, so $30,000 over the year. I'd like to see us work with trying to do a proposal on where our investment's going to see if there's other options that we might have for the funds or even our banking purposes. I don't know when it was reevaluated last of who's doing our banking, what kind of services we're getting, what kind of banks are out there offering different kinds of services for us. And this portfolio with a large amount of cash we should go through a process of making sure if that's the right location or if we have any other vendors out there that might be able to improve our rate of return. If we can do something like that, I would appreciate it. So I know that that's more of a recommendation than a question. And do we know of any of where else any of the other cities are going with their investments, and maybe comparing with the others that aren't going through that the vendor that the state is using in terms of their benchmark?
Yeah, so a couple of comments on that. The city currently has an investment policy, and that is what we are following to invest these funds. And what we have to be very careful is that we have to look at the three different elements. We have to look at safety, liquidity, and yield. And one of the elements that you were referring to is the yield, or the return on the investment. And it is good to have a higher yield, but also you have to measure that against the risk. So the most important thing that we have to consider when you have an investment policy is to make sure that the assets that you're investing are safe. So that's the first thing we look at. We look at investments that are safe. Also that if we needed the cash, they are almost equal to cash, convertible in a short period of time. And also, last, we look at the yield. And right now we have a certain portion of our funds invested on the state pool, which is called the Local Agency Investment Fund. That's what you're referring to as LAIF. And most jurisdictions actually do invest in this pool itself because it is a safe type of investment. And then anything else that is not currently invested in LAIF right now is invested in local investments. For example, we have an internal loan for the repayment of, let's say, the side fund for PERS. We're investing on that, and we're getting a higher return on that investment, but at the same time, we're not refinancing it outside of the city, so we're benefiting both the general fund and also the pool cash by doing that. So right now, we are not investing anything outside of those internal investments or the LAIF account. So we will be glad to look at the investment policy that is renewed once a year in December. So at that point, we could look at where we are right now and a better explanation of how our funds are being invested.
So you're saying in December, then we can evaluate if there's a process that we can go out and do the assessment?
For investments, correct. Then you were talking about banking. The banking situation is that we have been banking with the same institution for a while. That banking institution has been recently acquired by Union Bank. And we are in the transition period right now of going with this new bank in essence. And we are evaluating the services. We are determining if they're meeting our needs. And as needed, if we believe that is necessary, we will then do an RFP for those type of services. But at this point, we're just evaluating the new banking relationship that we are entering into with Union Bank.
I'd like us to consider looking at options on that to see, because if you don't ask others, you only know what the current bank is that you're going with their transition process. So I'm hoping that when we redo this, come back in December, that we can include that into a process that we can take with regarding any fees that would be helpful for us to either cut back or other services that we don't currently know exist because we haven't really changed our bank. I think we've been with Union Bank and that prior through those mergers for quite some time. So I want to give a chance for an RFP process to take place. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Vega. I hope that answers your question. We'll be revisiting the issue in December about the investment policy, and that'll be an interesting discussion, I'm sure. Safety versus risk, something that we all need to consider. Further questions on item 5.1, the motion to accept the investment report? I'll move that motion. Second. Motion by Hurst, second by Dodge. Discussion? Seeing no discussion. You need a roll call for that?
Yes.
Roll call, please.
Bielisich?
Yes.
Cervantes?
Yes.
Kaufman?
Yes.
Dodge? Montesino? First.
Yes, and so approved. Thank you very much. That concludes our consent agenda and the items removed from the consent agenda. Next, we move to new business. This is item 8.1 on our afternoon session, the consideration of processes for selective timber harvest plan for the city's Grizzly Flat property, recommended by Interim Public Works and Utilities Director Paul Massano. We'll have a staff report, a time for City Council questions, an opportunity for public input, and then we'll return it to the council for discussion. So can we have the staff report first upon the item 8.1, the Grizzly Flat property timber harvest proposal?
Good afternoon. I'm Liz Retta. I'm the Administrative Services Manager for Public Works. And, thank you. And I'm doing the presentation today on the Grizzly Flats Timber Harvest Plan process.
Okay. Wonderful, and thank you very much, and welcome.
Grizzly Flats is the city's approximately 200-acre city-owned property in the Santa Cruz Mountains, located 4 miles north of Corralitos. A timber harvest plan is an environmental review document that is submitted by the landowner to the California Department of Forestry and Fire Prevention, also known as CAL FIRE. It was formerly known as the California Department of Forestry. It outlines the timber to be harvested, how it will be harvested, and the steps that will be taken to prevent damage to the environment. Timber harvest plans are prepared by registered professional foresters who are licensed to prepare these comprehensive and detailed plans that usually range from 100 to over 500 pages in length. CAL FIRE reviews and approves the plan only when it is in compliance with all state and federal laws and rules. For the background, a previous timber harvest plan was approved in 1994, and over the next 2 years, 95, 96, the harvest was performed. The harvest was conducted in accordance with the approved THP that allowed removal of select trees from crowded second-growth redwood clumps and Douglas fir stands, opening the forest canopy to provide sunlight to smaller, undeveloped trees. Oops. This harvest began with the removal of approximately 30% of the dominant and codominant conifer trees in excess of 18 inches in diameter, and ended with the planting of 8,400 redwood seedlings on the property. The harvest received favorable post-harvest inspection reports from both CAL FIRE and the California Regional Water Quality Control Board representative, who cited the city's conscientious efforts. In addition, the timber sales provided the city with approximately $500,000 in net revenues for the general fund. The staff recommendation today is to direct staff to initiate and carry out the process necessary to obtain a timber harvest plan through the California Department of Forestry and Fire Prevention, CAL FIRE, to permit a selective timber harvest on the city's Grizzly Flat property, and authorize the city manager to execute all necessary applications and other documents required as part of the THP approval process. It has now been 16 years since the last timber harvest, and a new timber harvest plan is under development. The plan is designed to be part of a long-term sustainable forest management plan in which additional timber harvests can be performed every 10 to 12 years while still increasing the volume of timber on the property. The current timber volume is approximately the same as existed before the 1995-96 harvest, and which indicates that the property is and will continue to be managed consistent with the principles of long-term sustained timber production. Under the new THP, the timber harvest would include, again, 30 to 40% of the redwood and fir trees in excess of 18 inches in diameter. Due to a reduction in the price of lumber, though, the estimated net revenue is $250,000. The plan may also include the planting of 1,500 to 2,500 seedlings to be determined by the openings and gaps in the forest canopy after the harvest. The THP approval process. Okay, this is the slide provided by CAL FIRE for the review timeline for the timber harvest plan. It's a little daunting in this format, so we'll look at it step by step in the next couple of slides. But just to note, as mapped, this process takes 75 days from start to end without any delays. The first step in the THP approval process is the public notice of intent to file a THP. This notice is sent to neighboring landowners within 300 feet of the land or 1,000 feet downstream. It's also sent to the local county supervisor, the school district, and any water districts downstream that remove water downstream. Once the THP has been completed, it is submitted to CAL FIRE, and copies are sent to several state and federal reviewing agencies, including California Fish and Game, California Regional Water Quality Control Board, and the California Geological Survey. As part of the as part of the review, a pre-harvest site inspection is held at the property to view the proposed harvest site, and then a public hearing is conducted by CAL FIRE. CAL FIRE staff will submit recommendations and required revisions to the city's registered forester, and the forester will respond by submitting a revised THP as needed. After responses are received and the public comment period closes, the THP goes to the CAL FIRE director or his representative to approve or deny the plan. After the THP is approved, the city will advertise for bids from loggers to perform the harvest, and then the contract is awarded. The city's forester will then mark the timber and perform the walkthrough with the timber purchasers. Staff is also pursuing certification of the Grizzly Flats property through the American Tree Farm Systems, or ATFS. ATFS certified forests meet 8 standards of sustainability, including threatened or endangered species and integrated pest management, in addition to soil, water, and forest health standards. Certification will provide assurance to purchasers and consumers of wood and paper products that they are promoting the sustainable management of forests. And I end with the staff recommendation again, and am available for the easy questions. One of our registered foresters is available in the audience for the more technical questions you might have.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Let's see if the council has any easy questions, and then we'll go for the hard questions. Councilmember Kaufman-Gomez.
Let's see if they're easy or hard. I know that you're doing the plant replacement. How, out of the 8,400, what have we done in terms of the success the last time we did this for the growth? I mean, we planted 8,400 about 16 years ago, and what was our success rate of the new growth?
This is Joe Culver, one of our registered foresters.
Welcome, Mr. Culver.
Thank you.
Announce your name for the record and...
Joseph Culver, registered professional forester, working on this project. So over 16 years, typical survival rates of planted trees in these forests are probably 60 to 80%. And redwoods, many of you may already know, sprout from the stump. They're unique in that way as a conifer. And the reason why we have these second growth forests in these mountains today isn't because of the planting that took place, but because they naturally regenerated. So planting is used in between areas where you have openings that are created from the harvest, and is in some ways an expansion of some of the existing redwood growing areas. I don't have any direct data on the growth of the trees that have been planted, but the most of the sustainability associated with this harvest is going to come from the growth of the existing second growth trees, how they've grown since the previous harvest.
Any other highly technical questions for Mr. Culver? Councilmember Bilsich?
I don't know how technical they are, but stump removal, do you do any of that when they remove the trees? When they cut? Or do they just cut and leave the stumps?
Yeah, the stumps are the reproductive portion of the tree, so we want to retain those for future growing.
And of the 8,400 trees that were planted 16 years ago, how big are they now? What's their diameter?
So it would depend a lot on the microsite of the trees, whether they're shaded out or not. Probably your best trees 16 years old in a forest without being watered, except for natural, would probably be 15 feet tall. It takes them a while to get established. They're just hanging on for the first few years, and at some point they start putting on more growth.
But what's their diameter?
Probably around the 2-inch range. They're not trees that are, none of these trees will be targeted for harvested for another 50 years plus. The trees that are being harvested are going to be more in the 70 to 90-year-old range. That's how old the trees are that we harvest in the Santa Cruz Mountains.
So an 18-inch tree is approximately how old?
Again, it's dependent a little bit on the site, how fast it's growing, but a lot of these trees that we're harvesting are second growth trees that were sprouted from the original harvest, which is approximately 100 years ago. So anywhere from 70 to 100 years old, an 18-inch tree, but that would also be the same for a 30-inch tree or a 40-inch tree.
And how many of these are of the portion, what's the portion that you're going to take out of these trees?
So of these trees, of the larger redwood trees, larger being trees that are greater than 18 inches, about 30 to 40% of those trees will be harvested. Another way to look at it is, on average, probably between 7 to 10 trees will be harvested per acre.
Mm-hmm. And the main purpose of this is?
Well, it's revenue generation, I believe, and our approach is to minimize any environmental impacts while meeting the city's needs of revenue.
I too believe that the purpose is revenue, but isn't it also a good thing to do to clean out the forest periodically? So when we have these forest fires, do they take just trees, or do they take other growth or brush or what?
Well, one of the nicest things for dealing with the road systems that are maintained as part of harvesting and maintaining your property is key in fire protection. In fact, the Summit fire came down to the Grizzly Flat property, and the firefighters used that road for a fire line that helped reduce the spread of the fire. So one way to look at fire prevention is probably through the road maintenance that takes place as part of harvesting, keeping these roads in good shape for our future. As far as the forest health itself goes, it can be argued that by removing some of the lower branches and the lower components of the forest, there's less likely to spread fires into the upper canopies of the forest, which are more catastrophic.
When we are doing this harvesting, is any of that taking place?
Through, we try not to damage smaller redwood trees because there are future redwood trees, but just through the falling processes and removal of the trees, you are going to have a fair amount of lower understory being removed. And that's all lopped to the ground following the harvest to no more than 30 inches above the ground to prevent fire spread.
Is that hauled away, or is it just left in the forest as brush?
It's not left just as brush, though. It's actually a very effective erosion control measure to spread the logging slash and tops to lop and spread on bare areas that are created during the harvest.
Does it help or hinder fires?
The first year, you might have a slightly higher incident of ground fire, but from then on, it's going to be decomposed and been broken down enough where fire reduction could be argued that'll be less over time.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Kaufman Gomez, another question, please?
I did. With regarding our whole marketing, if it's organic, it's a little bit more. If we've got sustainable harvest, I would think that we get a little bit more in terms of promotion of sustainable harvest materials. When we do go out to bid, are we going to be looking at that for competitive in terms of the cost of return? Or how, when we do the RFP process, how are we going to financially look at this? Are we looking at the highest bid that can come in for the trees? Are we going to decide, okay, you have 100 trees and let's see how much each of you are going to go ahead and bid out to do the work in terms of the expectation? I know we have an estimate, which is half of what it was 16 years ago, but since they are the self-sustaining and we are going green, I would think that that marketing tool would actually benefit us financially with the project.
That's part of the reason why we're looking at the certification.
Okay.
Unfortunately, certification hasn't resulted in any noticeable increase in the price for lumber. So it's like a kudos, but as far as direct result and profit, we haven't seen it like the organic label would.
Thank you.
My question is related to that in terms of the city being involved with the harvesting of the timber. Is the city also going to oversee the sale of the timber as well? Or is that going to be whoever the contract is awarded to?
I'm not sure I understand your question.
Well, because one is sort of asking a little bit of Councilmember Kaufman Gomez's question had to do with negotiating the price of selling the timber. Okay. And I know that what we're discussing here is sort of the harvesting, sort of the, taking down of trees, supplanting other trees in place of what we're taking down. So my question has to do with where does the city's involvement end? Is it just with awarding the contract for the removal of the trees, or is it also going to be involved in estimating or pricing out the sale of the timber as well?
We'll have assistance from our forester.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, city's decision with our assistance.
Very good. Councilmember Bilicich, another question?
What's the actual number of acres we're looking at?
The property is somewhere around 200. Of that 200, there are about 130 acres that will be included in the timber harvest.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's have an opportunity for the public to express their concern or support for this item. Is there any public member who wishes to address the council at this time on the selective timber harvest plan? Please come to the microphone, announce your name for the permanent record, and share with us your thoughts.
Mayor Hurst, council members, my name is Bob Berlage, and I'm with Big Creek Lumber Company. We've been operating here in the county for almost 70 years. I'd like to, council member Bilicich had actually some really good questions about fire, and I wanted to add just one thing to what Mr. Culver was saying. When you look at fire in a forest ecosystem, there's two separate things. There's fire risk, and fire risk is if you walk out into a forested area and throw a match down. Fire risk is pretty consistent and the same in any forest ecosystem. It has to do with moisture and so forth, but the risk of starting a fire under those circumstances really is not affected by harvesting timber or leaving the forest alone. What really matters is fire hazard, and fire hazard relates to the manner of fire that occurs once it starts. If you have a ground fire, and Mr. Culver alluded to that briefly, that's moving across the ground in brush and small trees. A ground fire is easily managed. Crews can go in. Their safety is really not at issue. In a ground fire, they can get around that. Ground fires do not move very quickly through forests. That's at the low end of fire hazard, not risk, but hazard. Extreme fire hazard is when the fire is in the crowns of trees, more affected by wind, extremely difficult for firefighters to control that, because the fire can be 100 to 150 or 60 or more feet above the ground, moving more quickly. It's also more dangerous for firefighters, much more dangerous and much more difficult to control. When you selectively thin, you create openings on the forest floor, but you're also disconnecting tree canopies. Now, over time, nature will, and trees will fill that opening in, but if you have gaps between the larger trees, the hazard rate of a crown fire moving quickly is reduced some. So you can't prevent a fire. That's fire risk. Someone throws a match down, and most of the time you're going to get some kind of fire. But some fire experts have determined that if you expand the distance slightly between trees, you're lessening the likelihood of a crown fire to move quickly through the forest. And then the other thing, of course, is the road systems. We live up on the north coast, and 2,000 acres of our company property was involved in the Lockheed fire. The Lockheed fire was controlled primarily because there was adequate access through existing logging roads that allowed vehicles to get in there and do fire suppression. So thank you. I ran over time. I'd be happy to answer.
Thank you very
any
much
questions.
for your public input. Let's see if anyone else from the public would like to address us at this time on this item. This is your chance. Seeing none, we'll return this item for council discussion. We have two resolutions before us. Any discussion from the council? Councilmember Kaufman Gomez?
We have seen, even in the media at this point, over 400 square miles burned as a result of the rim fire. And while that terrain may be a little bit more rugged than what we have here, what we're trying to do is be proactive in being able to circumvent that kind of catastrophe in our area as a result of what this project would be involved with. And that also would relieve a little bit of pressure with regarding insurance premiums for the adjacent property owners and homeowners in that area. Because I do know that it is difficult right now with getting those premiums in some of those areas, such as Cathedral and a few other areas that I've done mortgages for. So this is being proactive in helping the neighborhood along with that type of risk prevention, so we don't see anything happen as significant as we've been seeing in the media on some of the fires as a result of no maintenance being done in those forests.
Thank you very much. Other questions, Councilmember Bilicich?
I just want to thank you for your comments and clarification. I think it explains what we are doing, and I agree with Councilmember Kaufman Gomez that when we've watched television, you see these fires and they are horrendous. And if we can do anything to help prevent that, it sounds like harvesting is what is needed. So thank you.
Indeed, thank you. Any other further discussion from the council? Councilmember Dodge?
I want to thank staff for bringing this forward to us today. I think that I didn't particularly have questions on the agenda item. We've had a great deal of experience with Grizzly Flats and the area that surrounds it over the years. So for those that might not have been through this before, it's been the subject of quite a lively discussion in previous years, which is why I think the report was pretty complete on what it is that we're trying to do. Of course, it's revenue driven, but at the same time, it's maintenance for the property that the city owns. This is our property, and I think we should project that to the public that is watching from this at home. This is all happening on city property. That's why the revenue that's generated from the sales of this timber goes into the city funds. Actually, this is, which fund does this go into? Okay, so I think that I was just curious about how we, the background of our forester and how long we've engaged our forester, and are we on a contractual basis with him for a period of time to go through this entire process?
Yes. Bill Vaughn, Cassidy, does he go by Cassidy? Bill Vaughn is our forester, and he was suggested to us by the Big Sur Land Trust. And we've had him on contract for the last, I believe we started this process in April. And he will remain with us through the timber harvest.
So it's a 3-year contract?
The RFQ cross, yes. Yes. I'm sorry?
It's through the RFP process?
Yes, yes.
Okay, okay. Thank you. I did, thank you. He was very precise and explained things very, how should we say, simple. So we appreciate that. We appreciate that very much. So those are my concerns, my questions. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. Any further discussion? Seeing none, can we have a motion?
I'll motion that we approve the resolution as noted, or
E and F.
E and F as well.
Second.
Motion by Kaufman Gomez, second by Dodge. Discussion on the motion. Let me just say, I think that the fact that we don't have a lot of discussion here this evening proves that we have done a good job of sustainable forest stewardship in the past, and will continue along sustainable forest stewardship in the future. And so thank you very much. Can we get a roll call on that?
Milicic,
Yes.
Cervantes,
Yes.
Kaufman Gomez,
Yes.
Dodge,
Yes.
Hurst.
Yes, and so approved. Thank you very much. Next on our agenda is item point 9.1. This is reports and presentations. We have an oral staff report on Main Street restaurant map. And I see everybody's getting up to go eat.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Vice.
Have the map.
Take a map with you.
Take a map.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and members of the City Council. My name is Elizabeth Padilla, Administrative Analyst in the City Manager's Office. In our continued efforts to revitalize downtown Watsonville, I'm excited to present our new Main Street restaurants map. This map was prepared by staff with the support and map expertise of our Geographical Information Systems Department. The map shows restaurants, coffee shops, bakeries, and ice cream parlors on and around Main Street, and is divided into 5 color-coded sections that represent the different dining categories. Our first dining category is American casual restaurants, which are represented by the green dots across the map. Our second category is Asian and international restaurants, which are represented in orange. Our third category are coffee shops, bakeries, and ice cream parlors, which are represented in yellow. Our fourth category is fine dining, which is shown in blue. Our fifth category is Mexican restaurants, which are shown in red. If you turn the map over, you're going to see on the back-hand side is all of the different categories listed. Under each of those specific categories, we list in alphabetical order the restaurants, the address, and phone numbers for each of the restaurants on our map. The map also includes landmarks such as City Hall, the Civic Plaza building, the police and fire departments, and the plaza. In addition, shopping centers, banks, parks, Auto Center Drive, and cross streets are all shown on the map and serve as a great point of reference for those folks not familiar with Watsonville. The Main Street restaurant map recently served as a valuable resource for all of our Monterey Bay Birding Festival visitors and was included in each welcome bag for participants. These maps will be shared with the Pajaro Valley Chamber of Commerce, our local hotels, and the Santa Cruz County Visitors Council, as well as displayed within each of our city departments. The restaurant map will serve as a valuable tourism tool for visitors and business organizations holding seminars or conferences in downtown Watsonville. Whether you're in the mood for a sit-down dinner or something on the run, you can get exactly what you need in Watsonville. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Who wants to attack the menu? Councilmember Kaufman Gomez.
Sorry, it seemed to be a point of conversation here. Your definition of fine dining, is it based on dollar amount, or what did you determine to put into that particular bucket?
We based our fine dining on a sit-down, nice dinner environment, which we selected as the Fish House, Jalisco's, and Cilantro's in the particular area that we focused on.
So El Ateneo, wouldn't that have a very similar atmosphere as what Jalisco's would have to offer for downtown?
It is similar. We actually put Alteño under a Mexican food restaurant. The menu selections and the prices are a little higher in the restaurants that we did select.
So there is a monetary
Somewhat of a difference, yes.
Any further comments, questions, suggestions from the council? Everybody's a restaurant critic here.
It's like a checklist. I think I've eaten on almost all of them.
Do we know if any of these have actual ratings from our health department? I know that some cities actually post their health department ratings in the windows, which might actually be a good marketing tool for them if they've been inspected and everything's good, because I'd want to go to an A instead of a C if I knew that where they were. Even hole in the walls, most people are looking to go to a place that they're familiar with, and if they're not familiar with it, if they had the rating in the window, then there would probably be a little bit more openness to give it a try. Are we going to do anything, or is that part of, I know that you're doing the map scene, but has that been in discussion at all?
That's an interesting comment, and it's probably definitely something that we should look into. This was our first initial run of our downtown restaurant map, and I'm sure that there's going to be changes and additions as we go along, but that's something that we can definitely consider for the next time we look at a map.
That would help, maybe.
Yeah.
What are we going to say to the people who aren't on the list or aren't in the downtown? There are restaurants in the community that just aren't quite in the downtown.
Right.
Tell us about that.
And it was one of the things that we had talked about. And given that this is our first run, we wanted to focus on the downtown area because our focus right now is on the downtown revitalization plan. And we thought this would be just a great addition. We have a lot of folks that come in here to use our community room and are constantly coming across the hall to ask us where a good place to have lunch is. So we figured that our first run of a downtown restaurant or a restaurant map would be, better focused on the downtown area for now.
Thank you. That's exactly the answer I was looking for.
Again, I just want to commend these efforts. I think it's a great idea. The Watsonville Film Festival was here last year giving a presentation and a summary of their successful event, and this was one of the comments that they made, was being able to refer people, and it was just by word of mouth, but it was held at Watsonville High School at the Mello Center, and this was one of their recommendations for us as a city, is to sort of, put together a listing of all the local eateries, all the local restaurants, so that they could easily hand it over to all of the visitors that were here for the Watsonville Film Festival. And so I appreciate that those efforts are being made to reach out to the different venues that are here locally that have a lot of foot traffic and that can easily result in a lot of visitors to these various restaurants. So thank you for putting it together.
I too want to thank staff for your work on this. This is a great step forward, and I'm sure there'll be some folks that want to get on the list that will be on the next list, and there'll be a bigger go around. And so thank you very much for your efforts, and
Sure, thank you.
happy dining.
Bon appetit.
Seeing no further discussion on this item, let me allow a chance for any public input. Do we have any public input on this item? We don't want to get in between anybody and their dinner. Then thank you very much for the staff report. Now I'll ask for any public comments on our closed session. If there's anyone who wishes to address the council on our closed session items, we're asking that they do it at this time. Seeing no one rise to the microphone for closed session comments, the City Council will now recess for those items listed on our closed session, and you can see those attached to our agenda. And so we shall recess and return hopefully promptly at 6:30. Thank you very much.